Hello, I'm Eve Grzyzbowski, and I'm coming to you from the Yoga Shed on Mitchell's Island. Today's lesson or demonstration is about working with the hips, a very important part of our anatomy, and one that often gives people trouble or is challenging, either because the hip area, the IT band, and so forth, the outside of the hip is very tight. And then sometimes the problems arise from being overly flexible. So I'd like to show you some movements that have been helpful for me and for my students. And the main emphasis, rather than just doing a series of exercises, really is to bring your awareness to those parts of your body, to make some discoveries about your own anatomy and to create more awareness. Okay, so we're going to start out with these hip exercises at the wall. That's where I'm going to get some support. So I've got my feet a little ways, about a foot away from the wall, and buttocks and sacrum, the base of my spine, resting on the wall. So keeping my balance on one leg, I'm going to bring up the opposite leg and place it on my standing leg. And what I noticed when I did that was I just tipped a little bit to the side. So the wall is good for not just telling you the truth about whether you're standing evenly, but it also gives you support. So just a simple stretch for the outside of the leg and rotation for your knee. If you want to get a little fancier, you could bend the standing leg and slide down a little bit, but not too far. And then readjust. So that idea of awareness of where your body is in space, readjust your evenness on the base of your spine on the wall. And then, of course, we do the other side. And what you might find out along the way, or you already know, is one side is tighter than the other. So if that's the case for you, then just notice. You don't have to necessarily even do anything about it, but just notice where the tightness is for yourself. And again, you can slide down a little bit and then release. We could do that a couple of times each side. We'll just do that for once right now. And we'll move on to the next exercise. Actually, these are all the same exercises, but in different planes. So, you can have a chair with, like a dining chair with a flat seat, and have a seat on it. Now, when I do this, and I'm sitting, it's a little more challenging when I bring my leg up, and that pitches me back to the back of the chair. So I'm going to hold my leg and then bring myself up a little bit more, and I feel that as an increased stretch in the outer hip of the raised leg. So one side, you might have noticed that for me it's true. One side is tighter than the other. And then looking for that evenness so that my both buttocks are even on the chair. Now, if you are a really, really tight hip person, I'll show you what you might do is take a cushion or a folded blanket like that. So you're sitting up a little bit higher initially, somewhat easier to get into the pose and to maintain that seat that's even on the chair. Like that. Now we're going to do lying down version. Got my yoga mat here. And it's really helpful to use the wall again. So lying down face up, positioning my feet on the wall, and right angle behind my knees. So this is going to be very familiar. I'm going to bring my leg in, flex the foot. That gives a little extra stretch there. And observing what happened, I'm a little bit onto one side. So I want to even my hips out so that I'm flat on the lower part of my back. So I can do that on one side, repeat on the second side. Foot flexed, my foot nearer to the knee than to the hip. Even weight on my sacrum. And I'm going to go one more round, because if you in your body are very tight in your hips, you might make that bigger than a right angle behind your knee. And then it's a little more ease when you bring your leg into that position. Even again, foot flexed. And other side. Leg turns out, foot flexes, and so how long do you hold this? You might maybe hold for 30 seconds. I'm going through this a little more quickly, but that's a good length of time. We're coming into the last round of the same pose, and in this version of reclining, we come to what the nickname is for the pose, which is through the hole pose. And starting one leg on the opposite leg, near to the knee, my hips even. Then I'm going to lift the foot off the floor, and the hip stretch begins when I bring the knee closer to my chest. And if it's possible, then you might be able to hold that leg, so underneath the raised leg and holding the front through the whole pose, and just very gently bringing the shin bone closer to your chest, and aware of how that feels. Is it too strong for you? Do you need to back off a little bit? Maybe return to the floor. And then let's switch. And bringing an evenness to where you're lying on the base of your spine. And then lifting one foot off the floor towards you. And through the hole, threading. Bringing that leg in close. Again, not forced. You know, how does that feel? Feel like you can get a good stretch there? Are you being protective of your knees? And then coming out of this pose. And we'll finish this, we'll make it more of a sequence by finishing it with a twist. And a really lovely twist. So I'll take some support for my neck and my head, and come over onto my side. And then bring one arm up and over, a little rolling movement. We'll do it 3 times. for good measure. And then swap it over. So the legs are placed, so again there's a right angle behind your knees. And then kind of like a soft movement, a waving movement. The joints are relaxed. And third time. And then back to starting position. And it occurs to me that we might add one strengthening movement because the hip joints have been stretched all through these 4 areas that we were working in, the wall and the floor and the chair. And if we do a strengthening movement, we could take that same position that we did for the rotation, head supported on a folded blanket, make sure your neck is comfortable, and then opening top leg and closing. So commonly known as the Clam. This is a movement that strengthens this outer hip area, which is really helpful for standing and walking. It's a hip stabilizer. So completing on the other side. And here's where you bring your yoga awareness again. What does that feel like on the second side? Maybe that's different than the first side. I know for me, this side's a little more awkward because it is tighter. Okay, and we'll finish there, and just to come up using hands and rolling up. And having well served your hips. Namaste.